base is dropped on a new edition of Soccer Down Here. It is a Thursday. We've got Glenn Davis of the Houston Dynamo broadcast team, also of ESPN, Fox Sports. Glenn has been at this for a long time, one of the OGs of American soccer broadcasting. He's going to join us at 10 o'clock to talk about Paulo Nagamura, what's going on at the Houston Dynamo, but also just kind of get a sense of how he's feeling coming into what's looking like a very busy 2022 MLS season. Niko Moreno is back with us. He's joining us at 10:30 to talk about MLS, to talk about South America rumors. We'll get an update on Raul Ruidiaz in Seattle and other things. So Glenn and Niko in hour number 2. In hour number 1, you've got John and Jarrett Smith.
Yes, you do. We're sorry.
What's up, guys? Yeah, I apologize in advance.
Yeah, I can't be held responsible for that either. So that's okay.
Yeah, there's that. Let's jump into the international flavor for the first half hour or so, because we've got Serie A kind of back today. There are games being played. There will be games that will go ahead. They kind of waited till the last minute to approve their new COVID protocol. It's the same one they had last year. It's the same one that was there before. It's just they hadn't had issues until really the last week and a half. They started to get a few positives before the winter break. They have now approved the new COVID protocol. 13 players are fit. You're playing. It's the same as UEFA has for European competition, by the way. So it's not any different. It's not anything weird. You can pick from your first team, pick from your Primavera team, essentially your reserve team or top youth team. 13 players, including one goalkeeper. That's what you have to play. Now, what gets tricky in Italy is something that we have seen and we're going to see today. Now, Napoli didn't fall into this. They were able to travel to Turin to play Juventus today. Now, they have had another positive since they arrived in Turin, which makes it very complicated. But so far, that game's on this afternoon. Other teams, when the local health authority steps in and prevents a team from traveling, you get the situation that happened with Juventus and Napoli last year, where Napoli could not travel to the game, and Juventus went through the sham of showing up and having a lineup announced and actually going to the stadium and getting on the pitch and warming up, and then the game's abandoned. Now, Serie A is still going down that road right now. Basically, if you have the players available and you don't show up for the game, you lose 3-0 by default. However, as we saw last year with Napoli, that will then get appealed. It will get overturned, and then they'll have to reschedule the game. Why are we having this stupid nonsense of a showdown at Jarrett Smith with knowing that whatever 3-0 forfeit you have, it's going to get overturned? Why are we wasting time?
I don't know. I don't. Everybody's trying to, I guess, figure out. I guess everybody's trying to figure out their own way to deal with it, but all it's going to do is just cause headaches and black helicopters. That's all it's going to do, man. Italy's been an interesting study in all this, because the way Italy has, in some aspects, decided zero games being played in terms of not the physical game, but like we are not playing around with this. And other instances, like we can be a little old school weird Italy about it.
They have some weird shenanigans at times. Bologna and Inter is one that is going to be abandoned because it's a situation where Bologna was ordered into quarantine by the local health authority. Players can't leave their homes or travel or play anybody or anything like that. So Inter, this was one where Bologna was at home. Inter arrived to their town, to their stadium. They knew they couldn't play, but it's all this song and dance, John, that is such a dumb waste of time.
It is. And you just would like for them to just go ahead, and you don't want all of the travel and all of the headaches and all of this pomp and circumstance for an official to start a match and then blow a whistle for a match that never got played because one team didn't show up. So it would make almost too much sense for me just to sit there and go, look, Okay, one team can't make it. Yeah, they're the home team, whatever. If one team can't make it, stay at home. Don't come to the arena. Don't come, and we'll figure the match out later. You don't have to go through the appeals. It doesn't have to be a 3-0 forfeit and put on the books temporarily. You don't have to go through all this pomp and circumstance of sitting there, players and dancing around, doing whatever. You don't have to go through that. Just focus on the task at hand, square it away, eliminate the travel, have some common sense when you're doing this kind of stuff to where you don't have the procession and all this other kind of stuff. Have some common sense where this is concerned so you don't have people looking at you like you're being silly. And this is silly for the second season in a row going through an event like this.
Other situations with COVID in other parts of Europe. Bayern Munich, their sport director gave a squad update. Julian Nagelsmann spoke as well. They think they're going to play on Friday against Mönchengladbach. They don't necessarily know. Alphonso Davies is now tested positive. Sporting director Hassan Salih Hamids. I'm blowing it. It's a really difficult one for me. Sorry. 10 outfield players, 2 goalkeepers. That's why they're trying to decide, well, we might be able to play, we might not. They have to have 15 eligible players, including 9 outfield players from the first team. So this is a little bit different standard. 1 goalkeeper. If they don't have that, game could be postponed. Right now, they think they're going to play. Goretzka has a knee issue they haven't been able to solve. He comes back to train, then he can't train. They're getting it looked at. He hasn't played for 5 weeks. Nicholas Sule, has been training. They don't know if he's going to be ready to go, but he has been training. He can probably at least get some time on the field, but you might not have many subs to work with. So keep an eye on Bayern and Mönchengladbach. That one is not a definite. Keep an eye on Manchester City in the FA Cup this weekend. Sam Lee reports that 14 backroom staff, including Pep Guardiola, Juan Malillo, 7 first-team players, so 21 people in total, have tested positive. The game against Swindon is still on right now. Rodolfo Borrell, who I think oversees the academy, he's going to take charge. They're going to use youth players. That's where it stands right now. That's all I have seen when it's related to new COVID issues. John, have you seen anything else?
No, that pretty much locks it down for me. And right now the game is still on the board when it looks like. And Swindon and Manchester City are 3:00 tomorrow afternoon. Manchester City, obviously still with all of this news going on, a prohibitive favorite on the minus side.
Yeah, well, I mean, who knows on that one? We'll just have to see. Has there been any update on Liverpool? Because they had issues that resulted in the Gummy Bear Cup getting postponed. Are they going to play FA Cup this weekend?
Have not seen any update where that is concerned. And with, Pep Linders getting a positive result and all of the other things that we've been staring at with Liverpool, have not seen an update with that either. So that one is still in question as well.
One other COVID-related issue, Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang has tested positive for COVID upon arrival in Cameroon for AFCON. He's also seen in Dubai on video with teammate Mario Lemina in the build-up to the game. Good job, Aubameyang. You're really doing good work these days. Keep it up. He has tested positive. I don't know what the protocols and what the situations are with AFCON and what that means. Is he out for just until he tests negative? Is it a certain period of time? I don't know, but he has tested positive upon arrival. I'm sure there will be more players that test positive upon arrival. That tournament starts on Sunday, and we'll have more of an update on it tomorrow. Oh, boy. Other news today worldwide, we've got a lot of rumors and talk about transfers as that starts to heat up early in the window. And maybe the thing that's heated up the most, Jarrett, is the possibility, and Steven Gerrard is sounding positive about it, Aston Villa could win the Felipe Coutinho sweepstakes. Now that he has decided that, yes, he will leave Barcelona, it probably some form of a loan with Villa picking up at least some of the salary. Anything is helpful to Barcelona at this point. But Steven Gerrard walked away from Rangers, walked into Villa, and now they're the ones who are really being linked with a lot of activity so far in the window they could add Coutinho, and they could add another player that you're very high on, Aaron Hickey from Bologna.
They could. Allegedly, he's also reached out to Rangers about a couple guys like Barish. I don't think that was going to happen. I think Rangers going to hang on to him. But yeah, man, it's Villa's decided, hey, if you we're going to bring you in, okay, cool. And I'm sure this was part of the agreement for him coming there, though, was I'll make the move south, but you got to give me a budget to work with. You got to let me go get the guys that I think can make this team make the jump. And if that's the case, it looks like they are holding up that end of the bargain.
Yeah, I mean, if you go add 3 guys, 4 guys to what's already there for Villa, John, where do you think they can end up?
Well, right now, they've lost 11 of 19, and they've lost 3 of their last 4. So they've got to, in their own mind, you sit there and we've got to do something to turn this around. And so right now at 22 points, you're looking, I would say, if you look at 8th and Wolves right now, that's only 6 points from where you are. And yeah, you've got to hopscotch a lot of folks, Brighton, Leicester, Palace, Brentford, to get there. So, I mean, you're looking right there on that edge of Europa Conference League. So I could see them in that 8th spot. And, you know, if West Ham and Arsenal work their way back to the pack, maybe a little higher than that. But I'm looking right now in that 8 to 10 that's easily attainable with the transfers that they have in mind.
I don't know. Where Villa last season was where?
Villa last year, as we check that out, they were 11th at 55 points, 4 points away from Leeds and Everton at 9 and 10.
Okay. I don't know. I feel like the ceiling might be higher for them if they get all these moves done. I mean, Jarrett, you've seen Hickey more than I have. He's playing in Serie A. I would assume he'd jump into Villa's team and be an upgrade for them if they're looking to bring him in. We know Coutinho's quality. Steven Gerrard played with him at Liverpool, so he knows him personally. I would think if they make the kind of moves that they're being linked with, that they're not just looking at being happy to get to 8th. It seems like they'd be pushing to try to get into a European spot.
Yeah, it does. Wait, go ahead.
I was just going to say, what do you think about Hickey's readiness for this level?
I think he can be that. I think he can slot into that situation. I don't know necessarily if I'd want to put him in a bigger situation in England, like a top 6 club.
Yeah.
But I think this would be a really good jumping off point, because I think after this, this could be one of those. We moved him to Villa. He got his feet wet in England, built up speed, and then made the jump, because I think he's talented enough to play for a top 6 team there. A top 6 team there. I've seen it reported. I don't know how accurate it is, because rumors. Remember, check your sources. I think I saw 14 million listed as what they might ask for him. You also have to keep in mind that this is England, and whatever someone gets brought into an English club, whether it is a Manchester City, or whether it is Wolves, or whether it is Villa, or whether it is Norwich, double the value of what is going to be spent, because they've got the money to spend, and everybody in the world knows it. And he's going to ask for more from them for players.
Yeah, it's a weird game that's being played at times, and Newcastle's really getting caught up in this because everybody knows that they're loaded. So the price is going up for Newcastle, whoever they're talking to, whereas it might not go up for a Villa. I'll be curious to see how things like that play out. A couple of other rumors related to England and English clubs. Lazio has opened talks with Liverpool for Divock Origi. He would be out on a free in June. They might let him go now and get a little something for him. Lazio wants to bring him in. If you're not going to re-sign him and you can live without him for 6 months, get a little something for him. It's useful at this stage. West Ham have reportedly, and this has gone back and forth, I don't know how valid this is, but Sport in Barcelona is reporting it, that West Ham have made a £5 million bid for Flamengo's Brazilian striker, Gabriel Barbosa, also known as Gabigol. 25 years old, it'd be a loan, so it's £5 million for a loan until December of 23. He was in Italy before. It didn't work out. He went back to Flamengo, lit it up, played his way into the Brazilian national team, playing in the domestic league, which isn't an easy road to make work. But West Ham, John, bringing in a striker who has got Brazilian national team experience, who has scored a boatload of goals in the Brazilian league. It's a huge loan fee, but it is a loan. How West Ham, what is their need here for Barbosa? Is he somebody who would go straight into that team and try to help them?
I would think so. And considering where they are in the standings right now at 5th, and you're in that group, and this is why I was saying right now when we were discussing Aston Villa, I had Villa at 8 in the ceiling, because then you get into that next group above them when you're looking at 4, 5, 6, and 7, Arsenal, West Ham, Tottenham, and Manchester United. They're all separated by 4 points from 31 to 35. So I think that bringing in someone like Gabigol for West Ham, I think that he gets inserted immediately. I think that he helps them out offensively, and I think that this is that move by David Moyes to once again solidify themselves in European football. And so I think that if this does come to pass, I'm looking forward to seeing how Gabigol integrates so they can stay secure in European football.
The thing I worry about a little bit with a move like this one and with a player like this one is he's inconsistent. He's streaky. When he's on, yeah, he can step into West Ham and play in the Premier League and score goals. But when he's not on, what can he give you? That's been the issue with his game that has to change a little bit. We'll see if David Moyes can make that happen. Speaking of Moyes, there's been a lot of conversation about Manchester United lately, and got to go way back in the time machine to remember David Moyes at Manchester United. Ed Woodward is finally officially leaving at Manchester United. It was originally said that he was going to leave at the end of the year. Then there was talk that he was going to stay to make sure the new manager was hired after Ole was let go. He is going to continue to attend meetings until the end of the season, but he will have no involvement in the day-to-day running of the club from the end of the month. So February 1st, Richard Arnold becomes the chief executive. He's been in the club for a long time. There's really not a dramatic change other than an individual here. It's not they're going in a different direction or anything like that. But as all of this with Manchester United has continued, and we talked about it on Soccer Over There, and everybody's talking about it all over England right now. If anything happens with Manchester United, the phone lines light up and it's chaos. Now there's a little bit of reflection about how they got here. And one of the things that it seems like people within the club are starting to realize is that they really didn't give David Moyes the opportunity to do the job. They pulled the trigger on him way too fast, and then they went outside the feel of the club. They went outside the idea of what Manchester United is with the Louis van Gaal, then even more outside what the club is with Jose Mourinho. They got back to what the club is with Ole, but he wasn't good enough to take them all the way. And now they've went outside the club again in terms of the feel and the personality and the identity with Ralph Rangnick. Jarrett, Moyes got crushed at that time when he came from Everton, had 1 year at Manchester United. They ran from him fast, bounced around a little bit, but now at West Ham, I think he's reestablished himself. And if you're Manchester United's board, you should be looking back at that and saying, man, we screwed up.
Yeah, and also this is a Manchester United board that, considering the comments that we've seen, and I know we have hashed this out here, we've hashed this out on Soccer Over There about Ralph Rangnick and what he is. You can convince me that Manchester United literally did not know what they were doing when they hired this man. Like, we're gonna bring in Ralph because he was the guy who was kind of who was the step before Tuchel and the step before Klopp and taught them. Like, yeah, but do you know what you're getting? Because I to this day I'm not sure you know what you were getting into, because my God, they don't seem to know what they were ever getting into. And beyond that, I mean, it seems like this is not a one-off situation. So yeah, you can. I mean, instead of just blasting Moyes, this feels like it should be one of those where we go revisionist and say, hey, instead of just blasting Moyes, why don't we have a conversation about the guy that got hired or that did the hiring in the first place and did the firing, and look at the entire board, because they've shown us that. I think they've shown us that they're not the best at making these judgment decisions for a huge club.
Yeah, I think what we've also learned is that Sir Alex Ferguson was a lot more than just a manager at Manchester United. He was in a lot of ways, the conscience of the club and the soul of the club during his time there. And when you're there that long, these things can happen. But when he left, and the last title he won was with a not so great team. It was maybe one of his best managerial jobs ever. It wasn't a great team that David Moyes inherited, and everybody knew that. I mean, that was the conversation when Ferguson left was, okay, didn't really leave a lot here for Moyes to work with. There's going to take a little bit of time, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, and then they ran really quick. John, it just feels like a board that without that steadying influence of Ferguson, like they had for so long, where they didn't really have to do very much. It feels like a very rudderless board, and they don't really know what to do, what the feel of the club should be, and it's just bouncing around from thing to thing. I mean, Ferguson wanted Moyes there. Okay, then they run from that quickly. Then they go to Louis van Gaal, who was very difficult to deal with at times, and he's always been that way. He's a brilliant coach, but very different personality. Although Ferguson could be difficult to deal with, he wasn't within the club. Van Gaal was. Mourinho, I mean, we all know Jose Mourinho, and by that point, he was broken Jose Mourinho.
Yes.
And then it felt like you got it back with Ole, but he wasn't good enough. You had to make the change. They made the right change. They needed to make the change.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if the reaction to who they hired is the right change. That's still to be decided, but it feels like a board that's just.
This is a board with Ed Woodward at the helm that has won a Europa League, an FA Cup, and a League Cup. You've spent $1 billion in transfers, and that's what you've gotten in return. And I think that and we see this in a lot of other sports and a lot of other situations, when you have that individual who is part of the fabric and the framework and the feel and the conscience of a club like Sir Alex was, then he goes away. Then I think you have a board and you have individuals that feel a bit emboldened. It's like, okay, so the big guy's out, and so now we can show what we've got. And yes, you've had the commercial success that a lot of folks are looking at. Yeah, you've got all these deals. You've boosted revenues. You've boosted your operating profit despite the pandemic, but you haven't gotten the results on the pitch. And that, to me, is the part and parcel to all of this. It's like the big guy leaves, and then you want to try to sit there and recapture it, but you don't want to give up what you've just recently claimed. And yeah, you can have all the success off the field, but only 3 minor titles in the grand scheme of European football. 3 titles and $1 billion in transfers since Ed Woodward took over. And I think that when you lose that conscience in a Sir Alex, then you've got to try to figure out who you are, even though you may think you know who you are. And we've seen over the last handful of years what Manchester United isn't when you don't have someone like a Sir Alex around.
They have to get lucky is what they have to get, and they haven't. They have made hires that don't all align. Like you get a sense of, even Barcelona, as dysfunctional as they've been, their coaching hires, you can find sense in what they've done, even with guys that didn't work. It's like, okay, well, he's a step removed, but he's got this in his background. All right, I get it. Tata Martino was probably the most outside the box one, because he didn't have any of the Dutch school or the Spanish school or the Barcelona school. He had the relationship with Messi, and he had a relationship with Bielsa, which was close to what was going on, but not exactly. Even as dysfunctional as they've been, at least those managerial hires made sense. This is just throwing darts at the wall.
Mhm.
So we'll see what happens with Manchester United, but it's going to continue to be a big conversation because they are a giant club. And it kind of goes back to what we were talking about with Nick Alifi on Soccer Over There this week. Giant club. And that's the weird element here. I just don't think they get it. So we'll see. We'll see what happens with Manchester United. I'm sure they'll give us plenty more to talk about. Let's get into MLS, though, because there's a bunch of things that happened yesterday. One is a new owner in Utah, Real Salt Lake, David Blitzer and Ryan Smith. Blitzer is going to be the primary. It flipped from how it was originally talked about, with Ryan Smith being involved in negotiations and Blitzer was going to be a minority owner. It flipped, and I think a big reason why it flipped is Ryan Smith's group took over the Utah Jazz. So now he's going to be the minority guy, and Blitzer will be the primary owner here. This is a guy who has the 76ers. He has the New Jersey Devils. He's got an investment in the Pittsburgh Steelers. He is involved in some kind of a takeover or buyout of the Cleveland Guardians in Major League Baseball. He's got investments in Augsburg. He was part of the conversation around Ricardo Pepi, although it was dispelled that he had anything to do with paying for Pepi to show up. He's got an investment in Crystal Palace. I mean, he's all over the place. So this is Jared, this is a big name to bring into that ownership room. And the league is continuing to do that. And when you get these guys who have experience worldwide, but also in the other major American sports, I think it only adds to what this league is turning into.
I agree. I think it is adding to what it's turning into, and it's adding someone else with a deep pocketbook and a deep wallet to go out there and kind of push the envelope. We've seen more and more teams kind of do this. It doesn't have to be. We had this conversation the other day about the difference between, in Atlanta, who's going to pay a $15 million transfer fee, and a Toronto who's going to have like 3 designated players, but all 3 of them are the top 5 in the league in terms of salary per year kind of thing, and the way you spend. But you have more teams jumping up into that category, not necessarily to the very top, but they're going to be pushing the limits, going out and finding players and asking. It doesn't have to be an Insigne for everybody, but going out and getting those guys who traditionally you would have said, oh, that person will never come to MLS until they're whatever age, and going and chasing, chasing the big fish, so to speak. Doesn't have to be somebody starring on a World Cup team, but you get more and more of these owners with a deep wallet and aspirations. It is going to elevate the league, and it's going to make it a more appealing place for everyone.
Well, Chara, let's make sure we're being clear here. It says RSL got to the Western Conference Final without an owner or financial backing, they'll be fine. We know how this stuff works, and let's not kid ourselves. If you have financial backing, and I mean, you got to have an owner, you're not going to exist in the long term, number one. But if you have better financial backing, you're going to have more opportunities to be good. It's basically like, think of how many different outs you have if you're playing poker. The more possibilities you have of that card on the river winning the hand for you, the more possibilities you have. That's what you want. That's what you're playing towards. That's what you're trying to get to. If it is a long shot, you're probably going to lose more often than you win. And in this sport, in any sport, the more money you have to spend, the more talent you can acquire, the better you're probably going to be. And this is a good thing. Like RSL, I mean, if this had continued for another year, I don't think they're in Utah anymore, because I think somebody's going to come in and offer the league too much money to move them somewhere else. So this is a great move. I mean, it's not that it's a bad move. I don't think that's what Wildchar is saying either. It's a great move. I don't think they're going to come in and just spend like crazy, because let's also be realistic about RSL and where things stand. Can they make more money than they have been? Yes. I think they can be run in a better way. I don't think Deloy Hansen always did a great job, especially towards the last few years of his run, from a business perspective. We know he didn't do a good job with everything else. But from a business perspective, I think they could have made more money. But their revenues are going to be among the lower ones in the league. It's a smaller market. It's just, you have to be realistic about that. So is Blitzer and Smith, are they going to come in and spend Atlanta United money? Are they going to spend LAFC money? Probably not, because it just doesn't make a lot of sense. But can they spend a little bit more to give Pablo Mastroeni a little bit more to work with? Absolutely they can. And I think, can they run things better too to make more money just in the business side? Absolutely. And I think you're going to be able to leverage connections and all of these things. You're taking, John, in my opinion, a small market team that even before the ownership situation was towards the bottom in revenue and towards the bottom in spend, but did put good products on the field quite often. You're taking that team from the bottom, I think, to where they could comfortably be in the middle pack in terms of being solid and having resources and having things to work with. And that can be a big change.
Yeah. And when you can understand the marketplace around you, and I think that a fresh set of eyes can also sit there and look at things in your footprint and sit there and say, okay, well, maybe we can go in this direction, and this direction, and sit there and try and increase. I'm not going to say maximize, because, once again, you're talking relative terms here, but if you sit there and can look at things in a different manner and perhaps go down different avenues that you haven't had the chance before, and go from that 39 million that you've had in past years in revenue, and a little employee growth here and there, and just stay within yourself, understand what you can do, but at the same time grow within that footprint. I think that this can be beneficial for an RSL. And I just think that there are times when you get that new set of eyes that can sit there and look at something and go, okay, well, let's try this avenue, and this avenue to help yourself out and expand in this marketplace coming out of what we've been through the last 2 years.
Yeah, I think it's obviously it's good ownership to have in. I think it strengthens that room. It strengthens the group of people who are going to be negotiating big deals. Brings a new voice with experience in both European football and in American sports into, broadcast negotiations, into sponsorship negotiations, into all of those kind of big picture things that the league is going to be able to really look at maximizing over the next 10 years when you look past the 26 World Cup and everything with that. So it's a good get for the league. I think it's a good get for Utah and for Real Salt Lake. It's great for guys like Brian Dunseth and Pablo Mastroeni, who it was reported that he was looking at other jobs and he interviewed in other places. And this deal was far enough along to where Blitzer was able to use his influence to keep him, to make sure he stayed, to make sure he didn't go anywhere. It's a good sign. I mean, I think that's a really good sign with what he did last year. I mean, is Pablo Mastroeni, right now the best coach in MLS? No, I don't think so. But he showed that he took what he did in Colorado, where he was successful. He got to a Western Conference final with the Rapids, but they were very, very defensive, and I think very predictable. And he showed even in the postseason with RSL, where they were very defensive when they went to Seattle. They get through. They were not defensive when they went to Kansas City. They played Kansas City off the park in their own building and attacked and were dangerous. So Mastroeni's starting to show a little bit more. That time off really has helped him. He gets the opportunity. It's exciting for RSL going forward. Some rumors and some moves in MLS. Colorado has added Abubakar Keita from Columbus Crew. $300,000 in allocation money, an additional $150,000 in conditional GAM if certain performance marks are hit. That's another defender from within the league that is getting a new home in Colorado. They've added to their depth. Columbus has now, according to the Massive Report, the SB Nation outlet in Columbus, they have gotten Yaw Yeboah, the striker from Ghana who is at Wisla Krakow in Poland, who was linked with DC. Looks like he's going to Columbus instead. Transfer fee of roughly between $1.4 and $1.7 million. he'll be a targeted allocation money player, according to the Massive report. So they get that winger instead of DC. No, dead again. You are not. Abubakar Keita
Yes.
has went from, it was trade yesterday, from Columbus to Colorado. You are thinking of Lalas Abubakar, who was already in Colorado. You could have a back line of Abubakar, Keita, and Lalas Abubakar at center back. Yes. That could happen. So buckle up. But yes, the Yaboa move now, instead of DC, looks like he's going to Columbus instead. Columbus, Jarrett, they were a huge disappointment last year. Giant disappointment. They were coming off of an MLS Cup. They had a bunch of injuries. They added a bunch of good pieces in the offseason. They had bad luck with injuries. I'll give Caleb Porter that. They had very bad luck with injuries, but huge disappointment. What do you expect out of Columbus this year?
Well, to belabor the stereotype of all of this, I expect something good because Caleb Porter likes to alternate his years, go back to his Portland days. He certainly does that. And as good as that team was on paper last year to going from 2020 to 2021, a lot of that depth was guys that we looked at, I think, and saw, man, this is a really nice roster if you want a bunch of guys who are going to be able to do different jobs in limited quantities, but not necessarily start 30 games. It was good depth, but it wasn't depth that can slide in and play an entire season. Let's not forget as well, because I feel like 2021 was like 5 years ago. The start of 2021 was.
Yeah.
If you all remember, one of the highlights of MLS Cup of 2020 was a homegrown number 6 for Columbus, just basically putting Seattle in hell.
Well, playing in place of Darlington Nagbe, who had tested positive for COVID.
Yeah. And then said homegrown gets hurt very early in the 2021 season. Hopefully he's back as well. Like I said, part of me wonders if we just get this Caleb Porter bounce back that he is known for. But you're also asking, you're also 2 years older now going into this of some of your key guys like Zelarayan. What does Gyasi Zardes continue to perform? I will die on the hill as a Gyasi Zardes fan, but what does it look like for Gyasi Zardes going forward? How much does he have in the tank where you're not looking at saying, hey, we need to bring in somebody else to compete for that striker spot? How much does Darlington Nagbe have left in the tank? I don't mean to be sacrilegious, but I'm sure that's going to get taken as sacrilegious. But, playing the 8 is a physically demanding role. And it's one of those that if you start falling off, it gets clear. And I don't think he does fall off, but, you don't stay the same forever. So it's the same issue that he had before, whereas a bit of an older team in certain areas. How do they get younger? How do they get better?
They need a bunch of depth as well. Defensively, right now on the back line, they have Josh Williams, who they keep trying to replace and they haven't. He keeps getting back on the field for them at center back. They have Jonathan Mensah, and they have Steven Moreira as a fullback. That's it. They got 3 defenders. They need depth, and they need another fullback to even have a back line of 4. So that's huge. They have 1 goalkeeper in Aloy Room, who they re-signed. They signed Zelarayan to a new enhanced deal as he deserved. You got a ton of central midfielders with Nagbe, with Artur, with Marlon Hairston, who could play out wide if you want to. Aiden Morris, as you mentioned, Kevin Molino, who had injury issues last year, who wasn't really in a position to help them very much. Zelarayan, who's outstanding. Zardes up top, who's outstanding. Wingers, you've got Pedro Santos. You've got Alexandru Matan, who I really like. Small, tricky Romanian player who was wildly inconsistent last year, but really good on the dribble. Kind of like, he reminds you a lot of Matrizu, who was previously at New York City. Derek Etienne and Luis Diaz, 2 speedsters on the wing. You've got Miguel Berry as a backup forward who showed that he can deliver in this league. The attacking portion of the team is pretty good, but you don't even have enough defenders to field a team right now. Yaboa feels a little bit like he's redundant in what you already have, unless you're going to repurpose Marlon Hairston as an outside back or whatever. I mean, John, with everything going on in the East, with what we've seen from New York City winning everything last year, what we know here in Atlanta, what we've seen from Philadelphia over the last couple of years, Toronto with all their additions, where does Columbus fit into that conversation for you?
Ooh, well, I mean, the first thing that popped into my head was the old Brett Saberhagen analogy, and that's the Google search for today, kids, is that Brett Saberhagen was a pitcher in Major League Baseball who had good year, bad year, good year, bad year, good year, bad year. And when he was good, he was very good. When he was bad, it was mediocre at best. And you're looking at, somebody like a Columbus, and that's what we're seeing with Caleb Porter, for an analogy. But you look at Columbus last year, and they were only a point out of the playoffs with everything that they were facing. And obviously, you have to sit here and go, okay, so if they're in, who's out? And I still think that you're looking at this 10 for 7 when it comes to the playoffs. I think that they're in that discussion, obviously, for that 6-7 if everyone's healthy and everything comes to the 4. But much like we're talking about with Toronto, they might have to win games 4-3 and 5-4 and have all this firepower with all the questions that we're seeing right now with defense. Obviously, we haven't even gotten into training camp and bringing in players and such. But right now, I still think they're a part of that 10 for 7, looking at the 6 and the 7. But they're a part of that logjam if everybody's healthy. But they're going to have to score a lot of goals to do it.
So are we just going to say that Columbus is part of it because it's an even year? Is that the route we're going to take here?
Absolutely. Because they were bad last year. They're going to be good this year, looking at the Caleb.
We don't operate in those. Well, you did. No, you did. Both of you did. We don't operate in that world. Columbus is potentially.
Yeah, and I'm fine with
that. Potentially a playoff team. Right now, they're not. Because right now they don't even have a back line. Let's see what happens once we get to opening day. But my questions about them beyond who is going to play left back at the moment. The midfield, it's another year older. You mentioned Nagbe, Artur coming off of an injury. I thought Marlon Hairston was great in the holding midfield with Nagbe, but they were not the strongest when it came to the defensive side of the ball. I think you can get overrun there a little bit. Zelarayan can win games for you by himself, but he's got to, be able to get on the ball in dangerous spots. So he's got to get some help from the guys behind him. That's a question. The front three, no real problems with. I mean, I don't know what Yeboah really brings to the table, but I've always liked Luis Diaz, who wasn't very good last year, Costa Rica. And I think Matan will give you more this year. And Pedro Santos is another one getting up there. When you look at some of the key players in this team, and their age, that has to concern you a little bit if you're Columbus. I don't put them back to a top team in the East. I don't even right now put them, if I had to pick the top 7, they're not in it. I think they can get into that. But the longer you go with some of these questions, and the biggest one, once you fill out a lineup sheet, the biggest one is going to be the age and how these guys hold up. And from a on-the-field perspective, the biggest one for me is, are they strong enough in the middle of the park defensively? I think if Josh Williams is your starting center back, he's good, he's gritty. You can get by him. Mensah has really established himself as one of the best, but he's prone to some giveaways from time to time. If those two are kind of left out to dry a little bit by a Nagbe Artur or Nagbe Hairston or Artur Hairston or whatever those combinations are, you don't have that lockdown 6. And that's where I think Columbus could really have some issues, but we'll have to see. Speaking of Toronto, Nottingham Forest are linked to Richie Laryea, Canadian international fullback who can play on the left or the right for Toronto attacks. Looks like Forest is going to get him. We've talked about Toronto's backline and how they have 6 guys right now: Kamar Lawrence, Alro, Laryea, 3 center backs with Singh and Mavinga and O'Neill. Well, this solves the problem of who's going to play at right back if Laryea is gone, but you do lose a very impactful player, Jared, a player who gets under other teams' skin, me included, I was a little upset by some of his actions last time we were at BMO Field. He likes to try to draw fouls and penalties and such. He doesn't mind going to ground and exploring the grass up close, but he is a very impactful player going forward. And Alro is not that impactful going forward. He's good, but he's not Larea. What do you think this move does for Toronto?
We'll see. I think you hit it on the end of that. Yeah, I mean, he is, for all of the heel turns that I know Atlanta fans feel about Larea,
Oh yeah,
he is good going forward. He's scary going forward. I think he showed this with Toronto, and he showed this with the Canadian national team at times.
mm-hmm.
But yeah, if it's Aro, is that a bad thing that if he's not going forward, and if he can be more secure defensively, considering what you might be putting in front of that back line?
You nailed it. That's the key. Is you don't need the right back to go forward as much if you have that. If you're almost like 5 defending and 5 attacking. If Bradley's sitting in front of a back 4, you're not asking your Alros and Kamar Lawrence's to bomb forward as much, because you're looking at potentially a Pozuelo, Insigne, Osorio, Delgado, Belotti, front 5, which, you'll let them have their fun.
Yeah, that's it. I mean,
over come June and July.
I think that's gonna have to that gimmick is gonna have to stop a little bit, John, because I don't think it's that simple either. Because we see how these games can go with teams with a ton of attacking talent, where one team battens down the hatches and sits back and defends, and the other team puts them under a lot of pressure, and maybe they don't break through. I don't think it's as simple as just they don't defend well, so they're going to give up a bunch of goals. Look back at some of those Barcelona teams with a Javier Mascherano as a center back. Everybody thought they would leak goals. They didn't, because they kept the ball. Can't score if you don't have the ball. So I don't think it's that simple. I don't want to drill it down to the overall simplicity like that. I want to see how it plays out. This move does give you a little bit of a glimpse, though, potentially, that they'd be okay with losing a very attack-minded right back, not a great defensive right back, a very attack-minded right back, because they could have one of the best attacks in MLS history, and they don't need their right back to go forward as much.
Yeah, that's the only place where, if you want to find an area, and I know that plenty of people are going to enjoy this as well. You won't, though, Jason. I can promise you.
Great.
If you want a place where you can hurt them, is if they turn the ball over and Michael Bradley is kind of caught in between.
Mm-hmm.
That's where they can get hurt. But
he can't cover the ground like he used to. He just can't.
No,
he's getting old.
I'm about to say, I was going to go back and hit this as I'm not trying to slander the man outright. I'm just saying he's getting older, and he can't go sideline to sideline like he used to. This isn't young Keith Brooking anymore. This is 2008 Keith Brooking against the Cardinals in the playoffs, who could not cover anybody. It was really bad. That game also ends because Keith Brooking bites on a run fake in a clear pass situation. Thanks again, Keith, and then talks trash about Atlanta when he goes to Dallas, and then tries to walk it back when he's going to get his ass beat by Atlanta a couple years later. It was really weird, man. That being said, yeah, I mean, them getting hit in transition is something they're going to have to be aware of, which is a conversation we've had about Atlanta in the past. Because when you've got a team that has a very explosive attack and likes the ball, when they lose the ball, you need whoever is shielding that back line and that back line to be really good. It helps in Atlanta's case when you have a Miles Robinson, who might be the best 1v1 defender on the continent. It helps when you are going to have a Santiago Sosa, or at times when he gives you the minutes in Osvaldo Alonso.
Mm-hmm.
How does Toronto handle that? Do they kind of rotate Bradley's minutes a bit to keep him fresh? That's what I'm interested in.
I thought they would, and I thought they had the guy to do that in Liam Frazier, but they didn't re-up with him. They loaned him out to Columbus last season. You've got Noble Okello and Ralph Prizo. Maybe Noble Okello becomes that guy that rotates in some. I think Bob Bradley is going to have to figure out And my guess is it's Delgado, because you want Osorio staying up as high as possible because he's so good crashing into the 18 and getting goals for you. Delgado's more of that link. Can Delgado become a little bit more of a double pivot with Michael Bradley to give him a little bit of help? Or is it asking your guys like an Alro, like a Kamar Lawrence, to tuck in from the opposite side of the ball to help Bradley in that spot a little bit? And that could be possible too. It will be interesting to see how Toronto finds balance. I mean, Gonzalo Pineda talked about it a lot last year. Like, balance is the key in all of this. And every team has a different definition of it and a different, kind of way of getting there. But you have to have some semblance of balance to be able to make this stuff work.
And yeah, you hit the last guy, and this will be my last thing before I jump and we play tag. But Kamar Lawrence, how does he look going into this year? What does he give you, and how much do you ask of him on the offensive side versus the defensive side as a guy who can be a problem when he gets forward on the left hand side? But how much are you going to be asking him and Aro to do that, to unbalance teams at the risk of that? Hopefully don't turn this ball over, because if we do, then it becomes Michael Bradley defending a lot of field in front of a back line. But those are risks. You take risks. We've talked about this with Atlanta last year. You have to take risks. Mm-hmm. And you are going to ask your defenders to defend, which is their job.
Yeah, you got to find your balance. Sometimes it's riskier one way or the other, but it suits what you have in your personnel. Jarrett, thank you. We'll see you tomorrow.
Yes, you will.
All right.
That's a threat.
Yeah, I know. John, tell us about Toca Football and Eliminize.
Do you have a young soccer player in your family? Have you ever considered private instruction with a professional instructor to take your favorite player's game to the next level? Toca Football has 4 indoor soccer training centers in the Atlanta area. Their trainers utilize innovative technology and a fun environment to help improve your favorite player's skill and decision-making. Give Toca Football a try. Why don't you? SDH is partnering with Toca to offer our listeners an opportunity to check out their revolutionary and fun Toca soccer training method for free. No cost whatsoever. You can book that session for free now with the promo code DH. That's your promo code. Go to tocafootball.com/program/toca-training, tocafootball.com/program/TOCA-training, or go to soccerdownhere.net. Click on the Toca Football banner and get your favorite player's game headed to the next level right then and there. SDH is also brought to you by Eliminize Service. As you can see over my left shoulder, for those of you who are watching the show this morning, for odor-free, clean, fresh air, Eliminize Service is the place for you. They deodorize enclosed spaces like houses, apartments, and condos. They've created a customized solution that eliminizes all organic odors, such as pet cigarettes and food. Realtors and property managers use Eliminize Service to eliminate bad odors to help them sell or rent their homes that much faster. It's a turnkey process that makes it easy to work with realtors and property managers, and it is a green way to get rid of odors without any kind of toxic residue. Different than a favorite masking agents that we have under our sink in the kitchen. It is a proven scientific formula to destroy odor down to the molecule. Pricing is easy, either by the cubic foot or parts per million, to come up with a price that's affordable for you, offering results in 24 hours or less. If you have any questions, frequently asked or otherwise, that may still be on the table, go to eliminize.com/Atlanta. The /Atlanta part is key, so they know what part of the world you are addressing them from. ELIMINIZE.com/Atlanta. Eliminize Service for odor-free, clean, fresh air. Proud sponsors of everything SDH.
Welcome to hour number 2, Soccer Down Here. We've talked a lot of MLS already, but we're going to talk with somebody who knows MLS as well as anybody out there. And as we were waiting on the deals to go down and who the next manager was going to be, I was like waiting for this deal to happen so we could bring him on the show, because it's been a minute since I've had a chance to catch up with Glenn Davis of the Houston Dynamo broadcast team. Glenn, how are you?
Jason, John, thank you very much for having me on the show. I absolutely love that Netherlands jersey you're wearing too, Jason.
Old school Johan Cruyff. It's even got the 2 stripes because he took the other one off.
Cool. That is pretty cool. I played with Wim Serbier, who was the right back on that 1974 team that played West Germany.
Very cool. I've been wanting to get into Houston with you because we've talked about it on your show, Soccer Matters in Houston, and some of the differences between Atlanta and the Houston market. Houston's got a lot of newness now with new ownership, new front office, new manager. How do you feel about the Dynamo going into 2022?
Yeah. So first of all, let me just say thanks for coming on, inviting me on your show. I appreciate it. You're one of the guys that I have tremendous respect for around the country when you cover the game and with your show. So thank you for that. Yeah, I think there's a lot of cautious optimism. I think two things that jump out to me very quickly here is the addition of a technical director, and that's because an owner's coming in with resources and has promised to create some new positions and to build out maybe the scouting side of it. The other thing is an under 23 team in that whole league that's going to be here, which will be in-house here finally in Houston. This whole travesty of having a team in the Rio Grande Valley. Anybody who knows anything about player development knows that's a money saver. That's not how you're going to develop players. And the Dynamo, look, in a multicultural city that has a history of putting guys in MLS, have not produced players to play in Major League Soccer, okay? When it comes to taking a player through from a young age all the way to the first team. So that's fact. But I think there is optimism because soccer people have been at it. Pat Onstad, the general manager, is very upfront, very transparent, communicative. That has been a problem for many, many years, just kind of clandestinely keeping everything in-house, not allowing people to go to practice. I don't know how you can create a culture doing that. I think Asher Mendelson's hire as the technical director brings more savviness, more experience. And then, of course, you got Paulo Nagamura now. Looking on the outside, I understand why Dynamo fans and what's left of them are skeptical. But I would also say I feel some real optimism with Ted Siegel, the new owner.
I was going to ask you, Glenn, when it comes to the fans, what has been the initial vibe, or is it pretty much basically like Missouri? You got to show me now, even with all of this new stuff heading in, I've got to see results before I come back to the stadium. What's been the initial vibe and the initial feedback?
Yeah, I think that's the way it is. I think there was some disappointment, let's be honest, about Paulo Nagamura because he's not fashionable, but nobody knows who the St. Louis coach either is, except for a few people in the know, right? It doesn't mean they can't be successful. I just think that, nationally, I don't think people really understand Houston. I mean, I hear guys come on and the MLS Cup's like it happened yesterday. That was 15 years ago, okay? That was a gift from San Jose to Houston, Texas. This is an amazing soccer city. It has not realized its potential in MLS. People, Glenn, you're angry. No, I'm not angry. I'm passionate. I came here in '84. I was a young kid, played pro soccer, worked in youth soccer clubs. It means a lot to me. And it means a lot to a lot of people. And they've been pushed to the side. So I think they're going to be able to bring some of them back. This is how you change a culture. But when you're beaten down that long and you don't have relevancy in mainstream media, I'm really jealous of you guys down there in a good way. But it wears on people. So when the rhetoric keeps coming and the tweets keep coming, it falls on deaf ears. It's information overload. Actions will speak louder now.
I felt like when you look at MLS, we talked about this with the Premier League and Newcastle being the sleeping giant for a long time. If somebody came in and did it right, that they could blow up. I felt like Chicago and Houston have been those two teams in MLS, and both are, I think, headed down new, exciting paths now. Hopefully it's a good thing for the league.
I hope so, because look, you guys know it as well as I do. These are big markets when it comes to potential media attention. I was pulling for New York City FC simply for one reason. I wanted New York to get attention when it comes to Major League Soccer because those two teams are buried there in other sports. So I agree with you. I'm hoping for good times. I can't speak as much to Chicago. I can only speak to them back in the days of, the Chicago Sting, the NASL, the ethnic base that they have. They're multicultural as well. As Chicago Fire in the old days at Soldier Field. But I want our city to take its due course when it comes to MLS, and the new guys they're entrusted to do that. They've got the pressure, and the owner has I think, an incredible ceiling and opportunity. To your point, Jason.
For a city, Glenn, and basically a region that I think we are all in agreement here that it hasn't realized its potential as a soccer market and a soccer
I
footprint.
would say as an MLS market. I wouldn't say it's a soccer market. It has as a soccer market. I mean, we draw ridiculous crowds for international matches and things like that. But as an MLS market, no, you're correct.
So then for those not familiar with the footprint and for what it means there in Houston and in the area, break down what the sport means to Houston and the footprint, not just in MLS, but internationally, regionally, across the board.
Yeah, well, first our location, right? We're located right close to Mexico, and we're a gateway to South America. We're multicultural because of a lot of different industries. When I came here, this was really kind of an oil town, right? Yeah. It was different. I mean, they used to call me a Yankee, and I'd laugh, and we'd have fun. And hey, we got too many Yankees down here. I was dating a girl back then. I walked into her house, and the old man goes, "Hey, who let the Yankee in?" It was great. It was great banner, but it really has changed dramatically. I mean, we got large communities, and everybody goes, right, "Oh, look at all the Mexicans you have." Well, it's Central America, it's Honduras, it's South America. We got an Argentine community. We have probably 40, 50,000, probably more Nigerians here who are soccer lovers. None of these people have been approached. Nobody's really made an effort to get out to them through outreach. And they're in the hinterlands. And these are the people you want. These are the loyal soccer fans you want. And then meanwhile, we're going to do a rebrand and we're going to pretend we're the NBA. And, you just say to yourself, how can you be doing this? It's just incredibly ridiculous. So this is why I'm hoping with the influence of Pat Onstad and company that this shift will move it back towards real soccer, the authenticity of soccer. Our sell in Houston has to be, look at our city, look at how many people love the sport, and look at where they're from. They are from everywhere. That's our selling point, and we've failed miserably.
It does kind of remind me a little bit of when Atlanta United was coming in, because you have a lot of those kinds of communities here in Atlanta too, and people don't really know. And instead of trying to go out, I think, to every different community and reach out, I think Atlanta United did a good job early on of being very open to everybody coming in, but then doing exactly what you said at the end, is putting an authentic soccer product on the pitch. And if you do that, all those different communities that love the game are going to show up. How do you think the team looks this year?
Yeah, so I just want to tag what you just said. Authenticity is important down here. I don't think you can sell authenticity unless you have a blend and a mixture of a people in a front office that feel deep down passionate about the sport, okay? It's a necessity. I'm not saying everybody has to be the 100% crazy, passionate soccer fan, but they have to know how to feel it. You got to get more hires like that, and you can get more hires like that. I don't think there's any question. As far as the actual makeup of the roster and the potential of the team, is that what you're saying, Jason?
Yeah, I mean, what do you look at them this season? Because I look at the depth chart that I've got with what the roster looks like, and it's pretty full at the moment. There's a lot of teams with a lot of holes, a lot of guys they're going to have to go get. Houston has a lot of guys under contract. What do you think Nagamura can get out of the group that he has?
Well, that's a big question. I mean, he's going to have to get stuff out of people that last year, frankly, didn't have great seasons. I mean, you're last in the West. There's nothing great about last year, You can't say somebody had a great season. You can say they were better than others, but you can't really say great when you didn't make the playoffs in one of the most forgiving playoff leagues, on the planet. So I think, what I've heard Pat Onstad say, and I want to take this from him, is that he wanted to wait until he had a coach before they did and made a number of moves. He did bring in Daniel Steres. They did bring in Steve Clark in goal, which I think is excellent. Steres is going to push the two center backs in Parker and Hadebe. But we're promised now a number 9, a striker, which is a huge necessity.
Yeah.
I'm never a believer in, we're going to score goals by committee. I always believe that you have to have a primary goal scorer. I think that's just a way of saying, hey, we don't have a goal scorer, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Fafa Pico should not be the Houston Dynamo leading goal scorer, with all due respect to what he did last year. And he was the team MVP in my mind, pushed it every day, came to play, but he should not be your leading goal scorer. So that's a positive, I think, in a way, that he scored 11 goals. A number of them were penalties. But, they need a striker. For me, they need a playmaker. And for me, they need a definitive midfielder along the lines of an Alex Ring, along the lines of a Joao Paulo, somebody that is definitive, that is a guy you just say, okay, that's our pillar in midfield that we're building around.
In early interviews, Nagamura has said that the goal is to get into the playoffs. And obviously, last in the West last season, that's a lot of rungs on the ladder that you've got to climb. I know that fans like that kind of optimism coming into a season. But when you look at the West and what Coach Nagamura wants to do to get into the playoffs, that's a tall order, Glenn.
It is a tall order, but you can't say anything else in Major League Soccer. If you don't come out of the gate saying you're going to make the playoffs, okay, why do I buy a season ticket?
Right.
I mean,
right.
That bar has to be there. It can't be anything less. For me, this is gonna be a project. This is something I'm assuming that the owner, Ted Siegel, is going to give these guys a couple of years to make this happen. We have to see progress going forward. I think those two pieces, having a technical director now, which, I mean, that's symbolic of how far behind you've been, right? I mean, honestly, to think you're not adding a position like that with an expert that's going to help your team, your club grow in a league now that has all of a sudden become a buying and selling league, right? And you're in Houston, Texas, and you have not been at the table for that. We've left millions and millions of dollars on the table. Chris Richards should have been a Houston Dynamo player, would have been, if business was in order and you would have taken in that money. So I think to change a culture and an identity, both on and off the field, it's going to take a lot. Now, can you make some real strides in MLS? You guys know this as well as I do. You add 2 or 3 good players, all of a sudden you look like a different team, and you can be pushing to get into the playoffs. And then when you get in the playoffs, anything can happen, like we know in Houston, right? I mean, I'm not sure the teams in 11 or 12 were great teams. They were fighters, and they turned it on at the right time and got into MLS Cup finals. So to your point, playoffs has to be the standard, nothing less.
We had a question from one of our listeners about the Dash and their popularity level, kind of going back to the culture of the game in Houston. Where do the Houston Dash fit into that conversation?
Okay, so let me take you back to when they were first brought in here. They were brought in here when the core business was doing poorly, right? It was the weirdest time to bring it. I'm as big a women's soccer fan as anybody. I've called women's national championships, NWSL, women's national team over the years with Julie Foudy. I love the women's game. I am amazed at where it's progressed, quality of play, and through my lens, because I'm a little bit older. They should never have brought it in at that time. It was brought in for all the wrong reasons, and it was never professionally run. Let's just say that. And I'm not trying to throw anybody under the bus, but this is a radio show. You guys want the truth. I'm telling you my truth. Okay. Had all kinds of struggles. Has not made the playoffs yet. Still has not, much like the Dynamo, is not relevant in the community, is trying, and we want it to be, and we want to be helpful to it. I think the roster has improved. It was a shame they didn't make the playoffs last year under James Clarkson, because I think they were a playoff team. The roster was better. It was a better product to the naked eye, just humbly from me. And I'm looking forward to seeing them do good things this year. But, they got the same problems as the Houston Dynamo. It's the same organization. And we'll see. I just think, with the amount of young women and young ladies and kids playing women's soccer here, there's no penetration in the youth market. It's just not enough people coming down there. I mean, couple hundred people a game. Maybe you get 2,000, 3,000 once in a while. You've got all the gold medalists from Canada on the team. You got to say, what is it? And it can't always be on the soccer community. You have to take it from the perspective of, we're the professional organization, we're accountable. What can we do better? What are we doing wrong?
I'm so glad you said that, because I feel like this is part of the conversation, big picture with MLS. I think the NWSL fits into this too. And watched it play out here in Atlanta, where you have a big soccer community, and the soccer community has come out and they've connected well. But what's pushed Atlanta with the attendance numbers that they have, and I think the interest in seeing the flags and the bumper stickers and the license plates, it's not just the soccer community. It's people who are coming into the soccer community from the outside. That feels like the next step for the game in this country, and we're making strides in it. But when it becomes more mainstream, I think everybody, lifts up with that.
Yeah, and that's when you hope you get mainstream media too. It kind of forces them into getting into action, right?
Yeah.
Look at Austin, for instance. And I've been up there to a couple of their games. By the way, I've done, I think, 2 MLS games in Atlanta, maybe 1. All I can tell you is, when I called that game for ESPN, and I went through that experience in Atlanta, and then I'm thinking and I'm relating it to Houston. This is like climbing Mount Everest. I mean, the distance and the gap to get to that peak in what I experienced calling a game here and then going to Atlanta, it's unbelievable. I mean, it's you're going home going, my God, you're a long way away from this. You're a long way away from this, and leadership's such a big part of it, and ownership's such a big part of it. But if you look at Austin, they're also selling the city. Houston's got to sell soccer also. It's not just Dynamo Dash. You got to sell soccer, because who cares? I don't care if somebody's got a Boca Juniors uniform on if they come to the game. I mean, who cares? You want people in the building, and those are the people you want, because they could become your loyalists. They really could become the loyalists. And the Dynamo did get that and had that in the beginning because of the gift to San Jose, but lost it terribly. The sustainability was just, it makes you want to cry, honestly.
So then,
I'm not going to cry though on the air.
okay. So then let me change the name on your driver's license for this next question. You're not Glenn Davis, you're Sir Edmund Hillary. You mentioned Mount Everest. What's the first thing on the to-do list that's either on your Palm Pilot, your BlackBerry, a short board that's the magnetic board on your fridge, or the big board that's 6x8 that's off screen? What's the first thing that you do there in Houston? You're in charge of outreach. You are the commander of outreach. What's the first thing that you do to start climbing Mount Everest?
To change entirely the landscape when it comes to becoming partners with the youth soccer community and the soccer community overall. Partners. And that's done in a lot of different ways. That means getting out there, foot soldiers. All the other things have to come into place, technical directors, improving academies. But the academy and the youth soccer community, those that are like-minded, those that are playing the game, you've got to become friends to them. You got to extend the olive branch. It's not about, hey, I'm the pro team. That was the attitude that sunk this franchise. Hey, we're the pro team, come fall at our feet. No. Go out there, partner with people. Ask them about information, how they can help, what they want. You got to have somebody who can go out there and listen, and it needs to happen on a daily basis. To me, that would be the big thing. You got to mobilize everybody, and you got to get them pulling the oars of the boat in the same direction.
I hate to hear that, because we've seen it play out. I mean, watched it play out here in Atlanta with the Silverbacks, because they had that issue when they came in, and we're the pro team, everybody should come to us, and they didn't, and it created a lot of friction. It feels like every market, and I think when we talk about MLS as a whole and what it needs to do and where it can be in 10 years and all that kind of stuff, every market is so different and has really unique challenges to it. And it sounds like Houston has some challenges that maybe an Atlanta doesn't right now, or Los Angeles doesn't. that have to be solved locally, and it's all about that local action to get them where they can be.
Yeah, no question about it. I mean, and you have to get away from, the litany of excuses from past people in the organization that would just fly off their tongues like there's it's Easter, the Astros are playing, everybody's on spring break. I mean, the more you say that to the general public, the more you show people you don't know what you're doing. Accountability has to be a part of it. Transparency, communication. I feel real good about that with Pat Onstad coming in. That's going to be a big change. Tab Ramos set that in motion, I think, from the coach's position before. He deserves full credit for that. But now it has to carry over throughout the organization. And, these three guys coming in alone can't change it. Okay. It's not going to only be them. It's going to be leadership. It's going to be the business side. It's going to be, to your point, you guys use the word community outreach, no question about it. But you've got so many resources here that you got to be prideful in that there's no way it can't work. And we should be, with a 22,000 seat stadium, we should be like a Portland Timbers. We should be a hot ticket in town. We should be great entertainment, great fun. We should be celebrating soccer. We should be celebrating the Dynamo and Dash. And we should be celebrating like-minded people being together who are proud of their city and their soccer culture. Simple.
I want that to happen for Houston so much. Love the time that we came in 2018. Love that stadium. Would love to be back there and seeing a full house. And I know, any of us from the outside would like to see it. I know how serious it is to you and how much you've put into it and all that you do to try to grow the game in Houston. Thanks for taking some time for us. I really appreciate it.
Jason, it's great to catch up with you. John, nice to catch up with you as well. And let's reciprocate. You guys come on my show sometime. And thanks for what you guys do for the sport. And look, at the end of the day, we all love it. We're having a good time doing it.
We'll be getting back with you again here soon. Get you back on SDH. And anytime you need us for Soccer Matters, just let us know.
You got it. Thank you, Jason. Thank you, John.
Thanks, Glenn.
Good, Glenn.
Glenn Davis from Houston. Always great to catch up with Glenn. One of my favorites in the league to talk to and talk about the game with. And there's nobody more passionate about their local community than Glenn in Houston. And he does so much to try to bridge those gaps that he talked about and to try to make those things happen. But it can't be just one person, I mean, not at this stage of where MLS is. And it's sad to hear that the connection between the club and the youth game is one of the biggest issues, because we've talked about this when we've talked about U.S. soccer politics and things to grow and some of the dysfunction in American soccer. That is one of the biggest ones, and it feels like it's a bad loop from the past for me, because I've watched it locally. I've heard about it in many other markets. I would hope that we're getting past that.
Yeah.
But in some major markets, and Houston should be, I totally agree with Glenn. Like, Houston should be like Portland.
Mm-hmm.
That stadium should be packed.
Absolutely.
It should be a great market, because it is a great soccer market. But the Dynamo are not. They're not part of that great soccer market. It's really disappointing.
When you watch Dynamo matches on TV, however you consume your product, and specifically the local games, and I'll be one of those guys because I'll be honest, I like Glenn's approach. I like him as play-by-play. I like him as a storyteller. I like how his presentation is there. So I naturally will gravitate to Glenn when he's calling home matches in Houston. Mm-hmm. And to see all of the empty seats and understanding the frustration that's there these days when you're last in the West. I get it. Folks don't want to show up and be a part of something like that. They don't want to spend their discretionary dollars on a product when it's going to, in the end, disappoint you. I get that. To see the passion that Glenn has across the board where Houston is concerned, where the Dynamo are concerned, and what the Dynamo could be, it's frustrating to hear what he said this morning. It's disappointing to hear what he said this morning. And as much as he's like the Pied Piper to me for Houston because of his passion, because of his energy, and you want others to walk across the bridge with him because of everything that he laid out this morning. And I'm hoping that with this change of ownership, with this change of leadership, and with the patience that's going to be needed with this product, that more folks will be there with him on this march. But it was disappointing at times to hear where Houston is this morning.
Yeah, we've had some of those conversations over the years. When Houston and Atlanta have played, Glenn and I have always caught up and talked about the two teams ahead of time, and we'll talk for like an hour because we get into that conversation a lot of times. It goes from, all right, what's going on with the team, what's going on with the tactics, to like the conversation about Houston and Atlanta and the differences and how things are going. So good thing with this new setup is it is a lot easier to bring guests on and manage that with our current structure without producers and such. So hopefully we will be doing a whole lot more of that, hearing from Glenn and people around the league like Glenn. It was great that he was able to take some time out for us today. We got Niko Moreno coming up here in just a few to jump into some of the rumor mills, to talk about Seattle, talk about Rui Diaz. Niko might have some updates to add to the rumor mill, potentially. Mateo left. He took the job with hockey down here, Sean. He left. He wasn't fired. He left. It was a parting of the ways that was done very well. But, yeah, this is why we're doing this kind of setup. It's just a lot easier to do that sort of thing, and it's something we'll be doing more of for sure. Okay. Other stuff on the board today that we have not gotten into as of yet. Has there been any more games canceled in Europe, John?
Have not seen any more games canceled, but for all intents and purposes, Lazio and Empoli has gone absolutely crazy. It's 3-3 in the 97th minute. They're in the 7th minute of 7 added in a game that has been absolutely bananas.
Okay. One thing that we talked about yesterday with Miami a little bit and Nico Figal, this whole thing about the rosters and salary caps and who's got what I'm noticing more now than ever before, and I think it's a great thing for Major League Soccer, is clubs taking risks on signing players, going out and signing guys for, pretty big contracts, bringing them in, paying transfer fees, what have you. But also now, which they've never really done much of, not being afraid to loan those assets out. And I'm hopeful that is because it's salary cap advantageous to do it and all that. But it just takes us into a different level with MLS and a different kind of conversation where clubs can go and we'll talk about it here from the Atlanta perspective with a guy like Eric Lopez, who promising young prospect. He emerges in the Paraguayan first division. He gets called into the Olympic team at a very young age, youngest player in the CONMEBOL Olympic qualifiers in early 2020. Go get him. Good deal. Bring him in. Look, he's not quite ready yet. He needs more time. He needs to play. He might go out on loan and get that time and then come back. And I think that's maybe part of the conversation why whenever that comes up, it's like, oh, it's a bust. He's leaving. No, this is what Domer can talk about it from Chelsea. It's what a lot of clubs do, where you can go get a young talent. They're not ready. Now we can have the Graham Potter Brighton conversation about Moises Caicedo, where I think he is ready, but that not everybody's on the same page with that stuff. That happens. That's fine. You can go sign guys and loan them out. And if you sign guys who don't quite fit, doesn't work out, like a Rodolfo Pizarro, okay, loan them. You don't have to cut bait. You don't have to take a loss. You don't have to just give up. Loan him out. See what happens. This can work. Like it's something where MLS teams can look at, we could actually have more than 30 guys under contract and we loan some guys out. We make things happen. I hope the league and their rules and regs are taking into account that is a good area of growth for the league. And it's something they have to do more of.
And that you don't have to be as rash in your decision-making if you're a front office and sit there and go, okay, well, this didn't work. Well, then to heck with you. And you wad up the proverbial player and you put him in the proverbial garbage can. No, there's other ways that you can navigate the system to where you can show patience, keep an eye on development, and still have them under your umbrella instead of just chucking them out the door. There's other ways to do it now. And it's good that you see MLS wanting to go down these roads.
Yeah, I like seeing another way of broadening your roster and development. I do think you'll see more situations like Eric Lopez in this league, and they should, because this league can be that league that goes out and gets the Eric Lopez kind of players who emerge in Paraguay, in Peru, in Chile, in Ecuador, and you can grab them for 2, 3, 4, 5 million. Sign them to 3, 4, 5-year deals. Have your options, whatever you want to do with all that, and give them time to develop. And that might not be sitting on your bench. It might be a loan out. It might be a different situation. So I like that that's becoming a much more regular thing. We are getting an update from Fabrizio Romano that the Richie Larea Nottingham Forest deal is done. He will arrive today to undergo his medical tests and sign a deal. Final paperwork's to be completed soon between the clubs. Richie Larea going from I think, below average number 10 in Orlando to a Canadian national team right back is one of the better moves I've seen happen in MLS, because he was an afterthought in Orlando. He wasn't very good in the position that he'd always played. He goes to Toronto and convert him to an outside back, and he becomes very dangerous going forward. And now it's moved him into the English Championship. It's great coaching in Toronto with Greg Vanney and his staff to see that out of Larea, to convert him, helps the Canadian national team. And I'm not going to be too sad to watch him leave the league and go to Nottingham Forest, because he can fall down over there and draw penalties.
You took my line. Right now, for those following the championship, Forest is in 9th place. They are 6 points out of the promotion playoffs. They've got a little work to do. They've lost their last 2. So Larea comes in, and we'll see what happens. But right now, Nottingham is part of that group in the middle of the table trying to fight for the promotion playoff.
Yeah, and Byrne, it doesn't have to be an either or. Byrne says, I'd rather have had the league have more homegrown slots and we signed more David Mejias instead of Eric Lopez's. I think both are going to be in the same situation. Both are going to need time to play somewhere to develop. And the league should be getting both. It shouldn't be an either or, because the league has the financial strength to do both. They should have the ability to have more homegrowns. I'm wondering if MLS Next Pro becomes a way for homegrowns who aren't quite ready for the MLS roster to become professional and play in Next Pro, and teams use that more and more. I think it should be both, because they should go and get those guys out of South America, because both groups will help you make money down the line, as we've seen. You know, whether you're going to get a Miguel Almiron level, which is a much bigger level, or a lower level purchase that develops into a bigger player from another country, or a Ricardo Pepi situation who moves on. You need to be able to do all of it. It's the same conversation I have about the draft all the time. Like, the college draft is not what it used to be, because teams are developing players in different ways. But that doesn't mean you should get rid of it completely, because there are still guys who come up from different parts of the country who don't go through MLS academies, who go into play in college, guys who go to college and weren't ready when they were 17, 18, but they're ready at 22, or they sign a Generation Adidas deal and they're ready at 20 or 21. You need to be able to acquire talent in a variety of ways. Vader says, besides Almiron, who else have Atlanta United sold to Europe? I would leave out the idea of selling to Europe as the end-all, be-all. It's selling. And they sold Pity Martinez for a profit, and that's something that always gets forgotten about. It's one of the largest outgoing transfers in MLS history. Selling to Europe, whatever. It's selling. Selling and making money on your investments. They sold Tito Villalba to Libertad in Paraguay for $4 million, the biggest transfer ever in Paraguayan league history. Money's money. And right now you're at a point where you're probably within the next year, and maybe in this window, going to sell your first homegrown player to Europe, in this case, in George Bello, and potentially your first college draft player to Europe if Miles Robinson gets that opportunity at some point. Selling. And this is where I think somebody like Chelsea has done a great job. Byrne, they have signed David Mejia. Burned. They have signed David Mejia. He's on an Atlanta United 2 contract. He is a pro player for Atlanta United's club. Yes, he's on a USL deal, but he's a pro player. So he's not going anywhere. That's locked up. And he is training in Peru's U20s. I want to be clear in this. He's training with their U20s. They have a training camp. They're doing it as a joint camp with the Peruvian national team. They are interacting. They are working together and scrimmaging, et cetera, et cetera. So, like, he's interacting with your Alexander Callens and Pedro Galeses and Peru's national team, but he's in the U20 portion of the camp. But he's on a pro contract with Atlanta United too, which still gives you all the ability to transfer and sell and do whatever. So he's good. He's good. No worries. Tranquilo. We're waiting on Niko Moreno. I'm trying to see if he is good to go. I talked to him last night. Anytime we have a new setup, I'm always like, okay, is everything working? Is everything going to be all right? Is he going to get connected? Like Glenn did. So that's good. Mm-hmm. I'm waiting on an answer from Niko. Niko could have gotten calls about crazy deals going on right now because Niko's in that kind of a world at the moment with all the chaos happening. So stay tuned on Niko Moreno joining the show. Hopefully he'll be able to pop in here in just a bit. What else in MLS are you looking for over the next week? Because we're going to have probably Monday, Tuesday is where your CONCACAF teams will go into camp.
Yeah.
Tuesday is the Super Draft. And next weekend is when your other MLS teams are going to go into training camp. We saw Montreal yesterday make an announcement about kind of changing their preseason a little bit. They're going to stay in Montreal a little bit longer, then be in Orlando ahead of CONCACAF Champions League. My gut feeling is that they're staying in Montreal a little bit longer to deal with any players coming back and testing positive upon arrival.
Yeah.
So it can be a little less disruptive. And by the time they go to training camp in Orlando, they're ready to go and good to go, and everything is handled. Other teams are starting to make those announcements, but I still think that teams are kind of in a bit of a holding pattern, not in terms of pushing things back, but just what their plan is going to be.
Yeah, I'm looking at, looking at Montreal to me is something that, looking at the other two teams in Canada, looking at Toronto, looking at Vancouver, what do they do with their training camp ideas? I'll keep an eye on that as well. Are they going to lay out a schedule? Are the concerns going to be pushed down the road like we've seen with Montreal? Are we going to have a situation where if things continue the way they are in the provinces, do they end up coming down here to the States like they did last year to start things off, something that's in my hip pocket? When it comes to players, I want to see what happens with Albert Rusnak. And that was one of the big questions for me.
Good one. Yeah, Rusnak was originally reported as going to Seattle. Then Keith Costigan, who does Seattle games on TV locally, said that he's not going to Seattle and looked like he was going to the LA Galaxy. Then you started to hear out of Argentina that Boca were paying attention to Rusnak because of a breakdown in talks with a big MLS club.
Right.
And you could have thought that was Seattle, but it sounds like it was the LA Galaxy because that appears to be off, according to Costigan, after he had said that it was on. That's the time of year we're in. It's chaos. So Rusnak, who I haven't seen anything specifically about on TIC, as I've been watching their summer programming, which makes me feel very bad about them being at the beach and looks wonderful and it's freaking cold here. But Rusnak would fit in there because it's very complicated at the moment with Edwin Cardona. Cardona's a Tijuana player, a Xolos player. He's under contract there. He's been loaned to Boca. It looks like he's not coming back to Boca. They're trying to get a process done where he goes on loan or sold to Racing, but it hasn't happened yet. So they're going to need to replace it. They're going to need that playmaker. Albert Rusnak going from Real Salt Lake to Boca Juniors is wild. And that's where I think MLS can start to get into this conversation, and where other leagues in this continent can too. Where would Boca have went to Europe shopping to get Rusnak? No, they never would have. But now that you're seeing the player movement between the Argentine First Division and MLS, yeah, they're going to notice a guy like that and notice that he might be available. And yeah, he might make the move from MLS to Boca, which is wild. I think it's great. I think it just gives you another down the road where you have a player that you are looking for a loan or looking for a sale, and it might not be a huge one, but a club like Boca, a club like River, who's bringing in LGP on loan, it sounds like, and Boca bringing in Figal on loan. Hey, business partners. It's a good thing.
And to see this happen now somewhat regularly when it comes to MLS, and I know that a lot of folks still have they've tilted their glasses down their nose and they're looking down at Major League Soccer. But when you see possible transactions like this and to have them on the radar first and foremost, and then if this does come to pass, once again, it continues to add to what Major League Soccer is becoming here in the hemisphere and in the global soccer footprint. And I think that, for those that might have been poo-pooing Major League Soccer for as long as they have, when you continue to have deals like this and mentions like this in the global conversation, I mean, we talked about MLS being a top 12 league, but to continue to grow and advance that number and have it really be inside the top 10, closing in on the top 6, these kinds of things add to that conversation. And when I mentioned Rusnak, I mean, it's because of all of the different ideas. Well, he was heading here. Now he's heading here. Now he's being mentioned hemispherically. To have that kind of a thing attached to Major League Soccer, it's another feather in your cap. Yes, continuing to have these kinds of conversations to me is just as big.
Yeah, it's big. I'm with you, Bernd. It feels like the dam has been broken about MLS players being good deals everywhere. Whether it's a guy going to Boca because he's out of contract here, whether it is a Ricardo Pepi and the large amount that he is bringing into Dallas, whether it's Richie Larea, I mean, it feels like the perception is changing about bringing guys in to your league, whatever your league is, whether it's the English Championship, Bundesliga, Argentine Primera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There's not a perception that is as negative as it used to be about talent from MLS. And I think the idea that a lot of people have brought up about Miles Robinson and, well, he's older, he was a college guy, or blah, 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 blah. Could it affect how much money comes in for Miles at some point? Yeah, of course, because he's not young like Bello and a teenager. Of course, like that's just business. That happens with every league and every player. But I don't think people care that he started his career at Syracuse anymore.
Yeah, right.
And I think the market is dramatically changing so fast that I don't think like a transfer market can catch up really with what the market is for an MLS player. It's a good thing. It's a good thing all the way around because it just gives you so many more outlets. It gives you so much more of an attractive pitch of bringing guys in. You can say, look, hey, you as a young player in the United States, we want to bring you into the academy. If you're Dallas, look what we just did with Ricardo Pepi. Mm-hmm. And look at what they just did with Jesus Ferreira as well. They just made him a designated player. And that's a big deal too. And that's not going to get talked about as much. But they took a homegrown who delivered in a big way for them last year and said, all right, it doesn't suit up right now to sell you overseas. The numbers aren't there. Maybe, you're not getting the interest. You're on the fringes of the national team. Okay. We're going to reward you for what you've done. We're going to pay you really good money. And he knows that if that move comes in for him, well, they'll sell him because they've sold all the time.
Yep. So
that's great. And you need that. If you're Dallas and you go call into a young prospect, you got it on both sides. If you do well, you're going to get paid.
Yeah.
And if you do well enough to get sold, you're going to get sold. Like, that's great. And other teams are showing that too. So whether it's a young kid in the United States joining an academy, whether it is a young player from South America, whether it's a veteran coming into the league, you can get rewarded in a variety of different ways in MLS. And it's really exciting to see the league get to this point.
Yeah, when you mention a Dallas, it's how they're developing talent, and it can go one of two ways right now with what we're seeing with Dallas. Teams in Major League Soccer are going about their builds in different ways. And when you have the talent in your stable, under your umbrella, that you can sit there and say, okay, look, you've done well here, regardless of what your age is. You could be 18, 19, you could be 24. If it's internal and you sit there and say, okay, look, you're here, you've done well, guess what happens? Folks are interested, and it's not just Major League Soccer. You're getting phone calls with, 13 and 14 numbers attached to the phone that's giving you caller ID. That's a good thing for the team. It's a good thing for the player. It's a good thing for this league as it continues to grow. And when you have different teams going about their builds in different ways, you can still be rewarded if you're those players. You can still do good business if you're those franchises. And it ends up being a positive for the player, for the league, for the footprint, and for the game itself when you have all of these different things happening and all of these different rewards that are going on for Major League Soccer, their franchises, and their players.
Yeah, it's only going to grow from here. And, we had this conversation when Miguel Almiron went to Newcastle. It's like, okay, well, now he has to go and perform really well. I think he's performed well. I think Newcastle has been Newcastle, and I don't think anything has been on Miguel or, he came from MLS, so bruh.
Yeah.
It hasn't been any of that. Alphonso Davies has performed amazingly. Ricardo Pepi scored a goal in training yesterday, and his teammates mobbed him like they'd never seen a goal before. It's Augsburg. They probably haven't seen many goals.
That's what I'm saying, yeah.
You're going to get these guys who go over and do well. Weston McKennie, even though he didn't play in MLS, he came out of an MLS academy. You're getting that too. So you're getting all of these different things that are very big deals in the league, and it is very exciting to see. Niko's had some connection issues, so we're trying to get him sorted out so he can hop on at least for a little bit to give us some updates, but stay tuned. We're working on it. There is a report right now, and I don't know where it exactly stands. You had put it into our chat, John, about the Athletic being sold to the New York Times.
Yeah, Jessica Tunkel at The Information, and The Information is, as they describe themselves, a publication with high-powered tech execs and founders. That's where the information is when it comes to who they are as an entity. And it looks like New York Times is going to buy The Athletic for $550 million. They've agreed to acquire the site in that deal, and this is according to sources close to Tunkel and The Information website. Regarded as a major acquisition for the Times, giving it a new pocket of subscription customers for the Times, which has set an ambitious goal of reaching 10 million subscribers by 2025. As of September 30, the Times had reported 8.3 million digital and print subscribers, so they're looking to boost by 15% in the next 3 years. But the big question from Tunkel and The Information is how the Times can integrate The Athletic without squeezing their bottom line. The Athletic has said they don't expect to be profitable until next year.
Yeah, that's been the question, is how the financials work, because we're seeing these streaming services acquire other streaming services to boost those subscriber numbers, and all that's great. But the other service had what it did, and is it going to get squeezed and not do what it's done to get those subscribers? And then everybody ends up getting disappointed with it. We'll see how this goes. But yeah, the business model hasn't quite caught up to the quality of the work yet across all sports, and we'll see if it can do that. All right. I think we have Niko Moreno ready to jump on. I think we've got everything connected. We're going to give this a go and add Niko to the show right now. What's up, Niko?
Hey, what's going on, guys? Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you. You sound good.
Good. Excellent, guys. Well, thank you for having me again. We're having some technical difficulties here. The Moreno family household this day. Got my coffee, though. We are ready to go, and I promise that I will make it up to you guys in the next 10 to 15 minutes that we have together.
You're the man. We had Glenn Davis on earlier talking about Houston and Paulo Nagamura stepping in there. We got Steve Cherundolo in LA. St. Louis has even got their coach now. All the vacancies are done. What has surprised you about the move in MLS to maybe go to more of the assistants getting these opportunities rather than bringing coaches in from the outside?
It's surprising. It's different. It's understandably why fan bases or some fan bases at least, were perhaps not happy with some of those hires. However, I guess when things don't quite work with the high profile guy, with the young, exciting Heinze, or with the great, legendary Bob Bradley. And by what I mean by maybe not working is not getting that ultimate goal, then maybe we're going to go a different route, right? I think that the MLS next level, or the development league that's coming up next year, it is one of the reasons why you're getting those assistant coaches, those Ezra Hendersons, those assistants that have worked with S2 teams or Kansas City 2 teams, and maybe that's the route. However, with Chirundo, I don't like it. I can't get behind it. I don't see the fit. I think that there's a lot of internationals in that team. I think that the profile of the LAFC, the big shoes to fill for a guy like Bob Bradley, needed something different. Either go and get me a foreign coach that can perhaps continue to bring this excellent talent, that understands different markets, and that perhaps just can give you something different. I just thought LAFC needed more. LAFC got too close to the price. LAFC has still too many weapons for you to begin a process like this. I saw Cherundolo a little bit nervous. He had like a speech ready and he couldn't quite read it. I think that this is my take, guys, and maybe it's wrong, but I thought LAFC going out there and getting all these former U.S. national team players to say, "Oh yeah, this is the guy for the job." I feel like that's them trying to explain to people why this guy's going to take over your program. That's just what I thought. It seems a little bit like when somebody answers questions that haven't been asked before they even ask, is because they have certain insecurities about it, and that's the way I felt about it. Before they even opened it up for the press, they already had all these guys coming in and saying, he was this tactician when he was a player, and it wasn't crazy, or we weren't surprised when he became a coach. So that's just my thought.
I'm with you when it comes to Cherundolo for a very specific reason. And you hit on it. It's a different job than Houston, for example. Houston bringing in a guy who was in USL, and one thing that people are missing with this, and LAFC fans, there's a number of them who are absolutely missing the point here, and some Houston fans have missed it too. Like, the record of a guy with a reserve team doesn't matter. Like, throw that in the trash. Like, what Cherundolo did with Las Vegas, like, record-wise, nobody cares. It shouldn't matter. Is he ready for a team like LAFC? And I don't care if it's like domestic or international. I don't know if he's ready for that spotlight yet because of little experience in that role. I think he's a really nice guy. I think he's a very smart guy. I think he's a guy that's incredibly well-liked. But is he going to get the time to learn on the job a little bit? Because he's going to need to. And I don't know if LAFC is the team that does it. I'll tell you who would have been a good fit if it was a year earlier that this happened. Somebody like a Greg Vanney, who is experienced in the league, could walk in there as a big presence with rings and with trophies from this league and could say, "Hey, I'm the guy." And that would have been fine. Cherundolo doesn't have that. He has a player resume, which is brilliant, but he doesn't have a coaching resume. And are those guys going to respect him day one walking in the door for training?
Exactly, 100%. And you need that at LAFC. Let's just say that Vela is coming back. Let's just say that maybe something happens and you secure him. You need somebody that can lead Vela. Vela is a very particular guy, and he has his ways about him, and he needs to feel that respect to his coach. Not that I'm not saying that he doesn't have it. I just the profile sometimes is important for a lot of these players, and also the experience for you as a coach to know how to deal with egos and problems and all of this stuff. Chicho is a great guy, but he's somebody that can also flip on you if you don't really know how to handle him. So I don't like the fact that you don't have somebody experienced going into the locker room. There's too much talent. There's too much at stake. Once again, for me, first impressions are important. I saw him very nervous with presenting himself, and he was stuttering, and I just didn't quite feel somebody that was going to be up there confident, ready to go, ready to answer questions. And I think that's what he's going to feel a lot of it throughout the season. And LAFC just doesn't have any time for all that.
All right, so one of the other guys that we were talking about before you came on was Albert Rusnak. And it's like, okay, so where's Rusnak going to be? Is he going to be here? Is he going to be here? Is it Seattle? You know, where Rusnak? What's been all the information that you've been garnering? We've heard South America now. What's the Rusnak in a destination from what you've been able to hear?
Yeah, Saudi Arabia. I mean, there's all kinds of rumors going about Rusnak. Yeah, Saudi Arabia. Jeremiah Ocean kind of put that out there. I think he saw that on somebody else's information line.
Bringing another briefcase full of money to him? Is that what they're going to
do? Not quite sure, guys. But look, I wasn't really on Twitter earlier that day because I was moving on to a new phone that I got for Christmas, and I'm having some issues moving all my stuff. But when I did get on, I did see all these rumors. I did get in contact with one of my sources that had initially helped me gather this information, and the update was still the same. There are offers, but Seattle is ultimately the most likely team that Rusnak will go for. The negotiations have been ongoing. Seattle has been manufacturing and changing deals and contracts to obviously pay Rusnak what he deserves. A lot of people, Jeremiah Ocean was the first one to talk about him being a potential TAM player, and maybe that's why there's some difficulties on getting him on quicker. Obviously, Garth Lagerwey is a brilliant man, but he's also not a magician, and fitting Rusnak into a TAM deal could be very difficult. So all of those things are going about it. But as far as the information that I have, Sounders are still the front runner to get Albert Rusnak. I think that he would be a fantastic fit, whether it's with the 3-man formation in the back or 4 in the back, whether, it's your Christmas tree or whatever you want to call it, or what you were playing last year, different variations of the 3-5-2. So yeah, I just think he's going to be a good fit here.
What do you think about Rui Diaz? Where do things stand there with Seattle?
That's another one. A lot of people, a lot of clickbaiters out there talking about Raul Diaz is asking for Vela money, and he wants to be the highest paid and $8 million. I mean, this guy was making $2 million last year. He's not crazy. He's not irrational. He's not going to ask for more than 3 times his salary. However, of course, he wants to get a very well-deserved upgrade, uppay. He wants to get the little boost in money, and whether it's $5 million or $4 million, Seattle is going through the motions to get him signed. Seattle wants him. They know they need him. Going into CONCACAF's Champions League is something that Raul wants to play in. It's something that Seattle wants Raul to play in. He's a fantastic leader for this team, not just because of him being a golden boot ever since he got on this team. No, just his leadership skills, his persona within the locker room. I mean, he's just such a key player. I am very confident that Garth Lagerwey would get this done. Negotiations are still ongoing, but there are no updates farther than that at this point.
How different do you see Seattle in 2022? I mean, there are some guys that are out, some guys in flux, some guys locked in place. We just don't know the numbers of the deal yet. How different do you see Seattle coming up this season?
I don't think it's going to be very different, John, and that's a great question because people who are not close to Seattle, people who perhaps are not constantly following the information, are maybe thinking that there's going to be a lot of big booming signings, and that's just not the case. Garth Lagerwey, as well as Craig and Brian Smetzer, even they were all been pretty transparent about what they want to do. They want to re-sign players, retain players from last season. That's been the motto of this organization going on to 2022. The quick start makes it very important for you to have guys that understand the system, that have chemistry, that know what they're playing for. This team did have a great run in 2021. Do they need some help? Yes. And you're still waiting on some guys. And I'm going to give you guys some updates, including something related to Atlanta United. But, you know, what I'm hearing right now is that Alex Roldan is very close to signing a deal. I'm waiting to see what the terms and the longevity of that is, but they're very close to getting him signed. He's another fundamental part of this team, from the right back position, from also his versatility to play other positions within this system. He's also a good locker room guy. No need to tell you what his relationship is with Christian. I mean, he's just a guy that's very important, very key, and he deserves it. He's coming from an all-star year. He was fantastic on assist, on defense, getting ahead. I mean, he was just fantastic. So he's almost getting close to a deal. Kellen Rowe is another player who I think is almost for sure going to get a deal. Same things, versatility, being able to play the midfield, left back. I mean, he's just somebody who wants to be here, of course. And I don't think he's, I don't think he's going to charge you a huge lot. I'm pretty sure he's going to get more than last year, but he's still going to be a pretty reasonable amount. But there are guys who could potentially go, and this is going to take me to what I was holding on for you guys today, and it's something that I believe Jason wanted to happen, and Jason was on when we talked about who could potentially go from Seattle to Atlanta, but I have already two sources that have confirmed to me that Atlanta United is actively looking to get Will Bruin. There are several teams within MLS that are obviously interested in Will, Seattle being one of them. Will Bruin is a veteran, an excellent person overall, but a very good forward, someone who can hold the ball well, that can score, that is physical, that has a lot of finesse people don't really realize, can really build up play. He's learned a lot here in Seattle. He's become a much better forward than he was before he got to the Rave Green. He wants to be here, of course. He has two young kids and wants to remain in Seattle. I know Seattle wants him to be here as well. But of course, there's nothing wrong with listening and nothing wrong with talking. So that's what's going on right now. Trying to make decisions, trying to figure out where it goes. But yes, that's what I had for you guys today. Two sources have already confirmed to me that Atlanta is one of the teams looking to sign Will Bruin.
It makes sense. I mean, when we talked about it and talked about guys being available, he was the first name that jumped out to me for two reasons. I think ever since the expansion draft in 2016, he was on a list that I've always had of guys that I just value in the league. I think he's just that good of a player. He's always been underrated. And now he's in a space in his career, and this season showed it for me that he can bring a lot of value for how much you're going to pay him. He can bring a lot of value to a club, and he would give Atlanta United something that, frankly, they've never had from day one, the ability to really, truly play two up top if they want, with Bruin and with Joseph, who has played in a two-forward system. He's done it a lot with Venezuela, where he played off of Rodon. He's played off of other people at times. Now, if he can develop the chemistry with Bruin that Rui Diaz did, then it gives Pineda another potential look at times against certain teams.
And that's the best thing about Will, that he's just going to sit and allow you to coach him and play for the team. He's not going to be demanding X, Y, or Z. He's going to be a player that's going to just come in and help out. Gonzalo Pineda understands and knows him very well. So understands him very well. So it's just a good fit for Will to get in for Atlanta United without a doubt.
Where's his injury history right now? From what you know?
It's tough. He's had some knee injuries. He's coming off of one. Honestly, it is a concern, but because of that concern, I think that he's going to come in at a reasonable price. I do know that he is very determined, stays physically healthy, active, and is taking much more precautions this season. He understands his last opportunity to get another big signing, so he's going to take care of that from day one.
And if you add him in to a mix like we have right now currently with Atlanta United with that firepower, it gives you that different look because, different teams are going to want to do different things coming at you. Having a Will Bruin as a possible addition can give you that change of pace and give these teams something else to think about when you're having to face an Atlanta United, possibly if this comes true.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think that's key for what Gonzalo Pineda wants to do next season. That's a guy that he understands is going to come in and get the system, and is very intelligent. I think he's just a good fit for Atlanta overall. And they don't all have to be huge signings for Atlanta. And I think Gonzalo understands that you don't need to go out there and get this $20 million guy every single time. You have a lot of talent. You have a base. You got a foundation. Bring in those MLS experienced guys that always work so well for a team like Seattle. And Gonzalo knows that. You go out there and get your Gustavs Vincents, your Kellen Rose, your those experienced guys that are going to come in and just work for the team.
Yeah, you need that mix, and I think it's something Seattle's done well, and I think it's something Atlanta now, it feels like, is trying to get to. Speaking of the mix, bringing veterans in, a guy that you know well, even though he's been in Minnesota the last couple of years, Osvaldo Alonso coming to Atlanta. What can Atlanta United fans expect out of Osvaldo?
And I was excited about that one. I had him on Pulso Sports the week before that when he was doing Nelson Nairo Valdez's retirement game, and that was one of the things that we talked about. And unfortunately, I did have a wind of it, but of course I hold on to my things depending on situations, depending on sources, depending on a variety of things. That's why I kind of put it out there very with a winky face about it, when I asked them, and then maybe an hour later, I forgot the guy from Atlanta that put it out there. But it's just a great fit. Osvaldo Alonso is a guy that is coming from a good year with Minnesota. It took him some time to get used to. There are obviously age and health concerns that are fair, but the best thing about Osvaldo Alonso is that when he is 70% or 80%, or there's any type of possibilities that he's going to be on the field, he's going to give you everything he has. He understands the game. I think that his IQ on the field for field awareness, for vision, has increased. When I talked to him, one of the things that we discussed was, what did he learn from that time in Minnesota? And he says that I need to rely a lot more on my experience than my physical ability. I need to remember that I have all these years of playing and I understand the game so well that I need to rely on that. And that was big for me, because Osvaldo Alonso was a guy that his number one thing was that he could cover that entire field, that he was so physical, that he was so quick, he was so aggressive. But now with that mental aspect also behind it, and understanding his limitations and his abilities and his attributes and what he can do, man, I mean, sky's the limit. This guy can really come in and help out a lot. Is he going to be a MLS MVP? No, but he could be a guy that every single time for Atlanta United is going to be a key fundament of what you want to do. He has played under various formations. I'm just huge on the guy. Not to mention the fact that you have somebody who has that passion, who has that will, that determination. You need those grinders on the field. And I think Atlanta was missing a little bit of that last season. Yeah. They didn't really have that el jefe, el patron, that guy in the middle, that type of Javier Mascherano that's just going to give you a different edge, right? You need that guy. So I'm just excited to see in what Osvaldo Alonso, a brainiac like Gonzalo Pineda, can come up with about how he's going to play under Atlanta United. I'm just excited about it.
I think a guy like Franco Ibarra takes a huge step forward to training next to Osvaldo Alonso every day.
Boom. I'll sign that right now. I'll co-sign that right now. Look at Christian Roldan and how much he benefited. Yep. Christian Roldan benefited huge because he got to play right next to the Honey Badger and understood what needed to be done. And he's somebody that's going to take you under his wing. He's not going to let you out there to die. He's going to take that extra effort to say, hey, young gun, make sure that you're not getting so far out. Hey, that pass was ill-advised. what you guys will see about Alonso is that he's not very outspoken to the media, and he's very short. Even in Spanish, he doesn't get too ahead of himself, right? He's going to be very to the point. But when it comes to being on the soccer field and within that huddle, it just changes. I mean, it's just two different personas. Don't get it twisted that just because Osvaldo Alonso not giving you all these big fancy words and it's not going on with rants about, what happened on the field. Don't get that twisted. He's going to really tell you on the field and in the locker room what needs to and not needs to get done. So he's just a great guy.
And at the same time, what he gives you is the cliche that we've used a lot for players. He's that coach out there on the field for you. He's the guy who can be the interpreter and the translator for what Gonzalo Pineda is wanting. If there are any questions, especially with the young guys that are out there, he can help them, one, being that extra coach. Two, if there's anything that needs to be translated, he can be that guy, the conduit for Gonzalo Pineda for what the action is going on during a game state.
And look, that brings me on to another pretty interesting thing. I mean, Gonzalo Pineda, I think he's the guy for Atlanta. I don't know what his tenure is going to be, but if he continues to be the guy, Osvaldo Alonso, once he gets done with, I'm not saying it's going to happen next year or the year before after that. I asked him, and he feels like he still has years to play soccer. But after that, can Ozzy be a coach out there as well? Can he be part of that, staff? He's interested about it. When we talked, he seems like he wants to go ahead and get the certifications and get ready. And he finds himself very identified with Gonzalo. He mentioned to me, and I'm paraphrasing here, but he's like, if I'm ever a coach, can no young guy tell me you haven't done it? Because just like Gonzalo, man, I've done it. I've lived it. I know how it works out. And I got, I'm going to let you have it. I'm going to give you a little kick in the behind if I need to, so it is just that persona that, yes, you'll see it right now on the field and maybe in the future in a coaching staff. But I'm just very proud of what he's been able to accomplish and how he's been able to stay healthy. And I thought that he did very good with Minnesota. I mean, this was a team that didn't make the playoffs before he got there and then made it when he got there. They got to a final for an Open Cup. They got to a final conference, MLS conference for the Western Conference. So, he was a very important part of a successful team to certain standards because, man, I mean, you could only be so successful with Adrian Heath and all these mistakes being done over the top of the front office, right? So, I just thought for what he had, he did well.
I want to end with this one, Niko. Toronto's Italian invasion and just what they're doing and how aggressive they're being in terms of salary spend. We've seen the numbers on Insigne. It feels like it's different whoever you talk to. It's somewhere in the region of $8.5 to $11.5 million net after taxes. They're talking with other players from Italy as well. They are going all in to get back to where they were in that 2017, 18, 19 kind of realm. Do they get there? Is this the right strategy? Do you think it works?
Man, I think it's hilarious because I think this is also Bob Bradley trying to stick it to, anybody who ever doubted him, right? I mean, he's getting a all-star team up there, man. I mean, there is no doubt in my mind that Insigne is going to be a huge player for this league because he's not your retired, Zlatan. I don't think so. He's a guy that's still part of the national team. He's still someone who, man, I think could play anywhere in Europe, really. So, yeah, I think with this Italian invasion, I love the name of it. It's basically, yes, let's try to get Toronto back to those good old days of Jovinko and what we were able to accomplish and getting a shot at 2 feet away from the goal from Osorio from conquering a CONCACAF Champions League. I mean, that's how close they got to that. So I think that's the ticket. And this team is rearranging and moving pieces that were there that didn't quite fit. Altidore probably gone, and Soltado is another player that I wasn't sure that he would be a good fit for that team. Looks like he also could be gone.
Yeah.
So I like what Bob Bradley's doing. He got to a house and said, hey, look, that's tacky. We're going to get rid of it. That door I hate, we're going to get rid of it. We're going to bring this in, that in. And, he has that knowledge, man. So he's going to come in and just make that look beautiful. And his value is going to immediately shoot up. So I love it. I think Insigne is a huge deal for the league, for MLS. I think he's going to be a great player. I'm already getting texts from players saying, hey, man, is this really going on? Is he really going to come in? Because I got to get on my game. I got guys literally saying that. No joke. No names here. But I got guys be like, man, I got to get on the elliptical or the bike or so. I got to get on it now. I mean, they understand that this just ups in many ways the level of the league. So it's a huge signing.
It's going to be a fun year, man. By the time we talk next week, Seattle will be in preseason. Everybody should be in preseason right after we talk. Still dealing with Omicron and all the variants and everything. Everybody's good in your house, right?
Oh, my goodness, guys. Yes. It was tough. It was difficult. Thankfully, everybody in my household is good, is taken care of. We did our 10-day quarantine, and even then, we make sure to be very extra careful. But it was only me and my wife that really got some heavy symptoms, which I'm fortunate because my kids, that was my biggest worry.
Yeah.
And man, look, I'm not going to say that was in my deathbed, but I don't wish that upon nobody. I mean, it was debilitating, man. That those headaches are like something else. It's like a migraine on steroids. I mean, that thing is just, it's difficult. Your body just feels tired and man, it's not fun at all. But yes, I am better. Thanks for everybody, all the comments. Your show, man, I love your show, man. Your audience is absolutely the best, man. I was getting, messages talking about, can we send you like a basket and stuff? I mean, look, I'm very blessed and happy to touch people in a way that they feel compelled to just say, hey, are you all right? Just that alone for me is big, man. So I definitely appreciate anybody who reached out.
Yeah, you're part of the family, man. Everybody's looking out for one another right now with how crazy this stuff is. Looks like MLS will be starting on time. Looks like everything will be good. Preseason could get a little weird. I think you're going to have people test positive coming into camp. There's just no way around it. So teams will have to deal with it. But by the time we get to next week, I would imagine there's going to be a lot of signings over the next 7 days or so as teams start to get ready for camp and fill out these rosters.
Yeah, and another question is going to be, who's coming back early as well, guys? Because this is a World Cup year, and there are friendlies right off the bat in January. We're already talking about Pedro Gallese possibly staying until things get done with Peru. Callens is probably going to be in a similar boat. Here in Seattle, I know Yemer Gomez-Andrade is in the list for those players that are going to play in Fort Lauderdale in January against Honduras. So all the Jimmy Chara, another player who I'm told that is being looked at by Reynaldo Rueda. And of course Chicho from LAFC. Yeah. So, what's going to happen with these guys? Are they going to come in? Are they not going to come into preseason and just wait it out until they're done with their national teams? So all those things are going to be important variants, especially for a team like Seattle that they're playing CONCACAF Champions Leagues, at the end of January. I mean, you got no time for nothing. So it's just going to be a very convoluted year, and teams are going to have to be ready to go. Depth's going to be important. All of those things are going to be amplified this year.
Yeah, you got World Cup qualifiers on February 3rd, and CONCACAF Champions League is like 2 weeks after that? Is that right?
Before that, I believe.
Jeez. It's going to be madness. Buckle up, man. I know you're going to be getting all these notifications over the next week, so we'll have plenty to talk about next time.
That's right, guys. Thanks for having me as always, man. I'm going to try to be giving you guys as much as I can. The off season, I make sure, and I tell people, know who you follow. A lot of people out there just throwing stuff at the wall, see if it sticks. That's not how this thing works. Know who you follow. I completely certify my stuff. I can tell you that I'm not saying that I'm always right, but I'm telling you that if it comes out of me, it's because I've done my homework and I know that this is a real thing. All right, guys. So just remember that. I'm going to give you guys everything I got. The off season is my regular season. So you guys are going to see it out there. If there's any projects that are coming up, I'll make sure to let you guys know, but I appreciate you guys, man. Thank you.
Thanks, Niko. Have a good rest of the day, man. We will see Niko next week as we jump back into the transfer market in MLS, because you've got a bunch of rosters that just need to get filled out. You've got a bunch of free agents out there. You've got teams that are going to want to get guys into camp. Really good point from Niko about the national team stuff, because you've got some friendlies in January that are non-FIFA dates, but for MLS guys who haven't started camp yet or are about to start camp, they might stay with their national teams. You've got like Peru in a long-term camp right now before they play their qualifiers at the end of the month. It's going to be chaotic a little bit, and then add the chaos of the potential of guys testing positive and having to be away and then quarantine and then come back and all the protocols you're gonna have to follow with all of that. It's gonna be a weird start to the season with COVID, with international friendlies, with World Cup qualifiers for the first time in this kind of a window, CONCACAF Champions League, and then the start of the season earlier than ever before. So just buckle up and stuff.
15th, 16th, and 17th of February is your round of 16 for CONCACAF Champions League. The Revs, NYC, and Montreal play on the 15th for their first games. On the 17th, it's when Colorado and Seattle kick back in.
It's going to be hectic. It's going to be hectic for us tomorrow as well. We got Mike Conti joining the show. All kinds of shenanigans like we usually do. There'll probably be more games in Europe canceled. There'll probably be more crazy transfer rumors going on over there that we will get to, and we'll update you on everything happening over the next 24 hours when we reconvene at 9:05 tomorrow morning. Thanks for hanging out with us. Thanks to Glenn Davis and Niko Moreno for joining us. Make sure you're following both of them on your social medias. Both are excellent follows and share a lot of great information. Glenn was the first one who had Nagamura going to Houston as the new manager. Niko breaks bombas all the time. So make sure you're following our friends Glenn and Niko. We'll be back with you tomorrow. Y'all have a good rest of the day. Mucha plata, y'all.
Mucha plata, y'all.